Hello, Sensei Cisco here for Sensei Martial Arts. Now today, we are actually getting started immediately on time. So we will be, I'll be sharing this video with our social media afterwards. But our topic of discussion today is going to be just how to, sort of the basics, as you saw in the description, the basics of calisthenic fitness. Essentially, how do we do our push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and what makes each exercise different from the last. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, it's just push-ups. Like anybody can do a push-up. You just push the ground away. But ultimately, the way that you do the push-up is what changes the type that it is. Same thing with our core exercises, because you have sit-ups and roll-ups. You have crunches and you have V-ups. You have a half V or a full V. You can do leg lifts or flutter kicks. All of these are going to exercise the muscles in slightly different ways. And ultimately, if you only focus on one, your body's not going to get the full benefit of that area workout. You know, each of these individual eccentricities and differences in the style that we perform it will change how your body weight shifts. And when your body weight shifts, that's going to put more stress on one muscle group over another. This even includes the way we position our elbows or our knees. This will subtly alter where the weight is being pressed into so that different muscle groups can work. However, each area does have this sort of core similarity. In the case of push-ups, every push-up is going to focus mostly on a bending of the elbow and shoulder and maintaining straightness of the body and core, meaning your hips are straight, legs to spine. There's no bend or press. The reason for this is, as I mentioned before, the weight distribution. And in calisthenics, weight distribution is key. Now, in our last video, we did on this past Monday the 13th, we did a quick little fitness test, just seeing how many can we do in a set time limit. Now, ultimately, whatever your numbers were, if you joined us for that, awesome. I hope you got results that you were happy with. But if your results weren't what you expected, or maybe they completely blew your expectations out of the water, there's a couple things that may have happened. One, if you were doing these with poor technique, this could have made your exercises either more difficult to perform or much easier to perform. And that's something we're going to take a look at today. Understanding these differences are a way for you to better improve your day-to-day workouts or your bi-daily exercises, as we've been doing with our 60-30s. So that being said, we're going to take a look at 4 major exercise quadrants or focuses of pressure. Now, my approach to calisthenics, instead of attacking certain muscle groups, I'm going to attack my arms today, I'm going to attack my core today. I like to approach it from what work am I doing? What's the job at hand? Am I pushing something or am I pulling it? Am I sitting up? Am I crunching my body, sort of shrinking around the abdomen? Or am I lifting my body with my legs? So I look at push and pull, core, and legs. Each one of these should be moving your body weight in a certain direction. Now, you can absolutely increase the difficulty of any exercise using a weight vest. Just put some weights around your body. Weight vests are nice because they can wrap tightly so they don't slide around or tug or offset. They simply take your natural body weight and then add 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, however heavy a vest that you prefer. And if done responsibly and with proper technique, you should avoid any sort of injury. Bear in mind that if you are using weighted equipment in this, we still want to keep the core essence of our calisthenic exercise and technique in mind to avoid said injuries. Because if you do an exercise wrong and you do it wrong enough, this can create deformation in the joints, muscle groups that will grow in the wrong directions or the wrong ways, or you'll have one muscle group that grows much larger than the other supportive muscles can bear. Then when you go to perform another exercise, the big guy's going to pull, and all those little guys will get torn and ripped, and this can create an injury itself. So technique always comes first. Safety always comes first. Now, the exercise we'll be taking a look at today is, of course, not everything. I have a whole list of exercises. In fact, I can grab it real quick just to kind of show you guys. This is a whole list of individual exercise names in each group that I use when setting up a warm-up routine or a 60-30 routine. Each of these exercises has a name to sort of give an idea of what type of motion we're doing. Now, there are so many sources out there that'll tell you how to do a push-up. It'll give you different names for these push-ups. In my years of research, I've found that there is no real standard. Everyone kind of knows what a push-up is, but then there's a lot of misunderstanding or deliberation on if the elbows are in. Do we call this a Marine-style push-up or a Pilates-style push-up or a shoulder press? You know, shoulder press is typically up here because you activate the shoulder muscle, but I've seen some sources say that this motion can be considered a shoulder press because you're putting a lot of emphasis on the front of the shoulder here. So what you call your exercises is mostly just up to you and your coach. Adapt to what your coach is calling things so that you remain on the same page. When they call something out, all right, switch to this one. You can get right into it. What's important is how you're doing it. Doesn't matter the name. There are hundreds of languages in the world. The French word for push-up is different than the English word for push-up. And that holds the same for individual exercises within the realm of push-ups. So if I'm using names that you don't recognize today, or maybe you've heard it called something different, that's okay. What's important is how we are doing it. Call it what you want. These are the names that I give to them to help me keep organized in my routines. So what we're going to take a look at is, again, not everything on the list, but I did mark off a couple that I want you to talk about, as these are the core essence, the starting points for each muscle group, for each exercise theme that we have. Now, these are going to be for cardio, jumping jacks, and burpees. So jumping jack, jumping and clapping, burpee, jumping and kicking the feet out. These are intended to get the heart rate up, get the blood pumping, get the whole body moving and ready to go. You can absolutely push these to further extremes. They're doing 50 jumping jacks or 100 or 200, or setting time limits at 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just keep jumping, jumping, jumping. The more you do it, the more it'll work. We'll then go into pushing exercises. Now, for pushing, we're going to talk about, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different push-ups, but they all have the same thing in common in how we set them up, and I call this the flower drill. So we're going to talk a little bit on that flower drill and how these different push-ups relate to each other, and how the shifting of hand positions will adjust what's happening in that push-up. We'll then go into pulling exercises, talking about the difference of a pull-up versus a chin-up. For this, you will need a bar of some sort. You can even use a tree branch outside on a nice day and just grab and pull that up. Or if you have one of the ones that hook onto a door frame, you can use that as well. For core, we'll take a look at the difference of roll-ups and sit-ups, as I mentioned before, as well as leg lifts and V-ups. So we're looking how we can fold the body around the abdomen. In the final, for our legs, we'll take a look at the difference between pencil squats and horse squats, and then the 2 variations of a pistol squat. So all that being said, today's going to be more about review, less about getting a deep sweat, but I hope you'll join us. I hope you follow along and you'll learn something about your exercises. Let's start off with that cardio, as mentioned before. First off is our jumping jacks. For a basic jumping jack, we're going to start in a straight position, kind of making a letter I with our body. Now you can absolutely have your toes closed. As a karateka, I keep mine flared as this is our attention stance. This is also going to help me balance when I come to that center position. So this is my center position. When I jump out, I'm going to push from the toes up so that my feet land outside my shoulder width. I'm not looking to get a huge range here all the way out to the arm's width, but rather just outside the shoulders. You can even go as far as elbows width. If you put your thumbs on your shoulders, feet underneath your elbows, that is a good position. Next, our hands are going to come up above the head, elbows level with the ear to clap up high. My hands want to meet on the center point. We then jump again from the toes, little bend to the knees, and we should land back where we started. Now, as I mentioned, this is why I like to have a flare on my toes. This allows me to keep that 45-degree angle out and in. This keeps my knees lined up as well, so I can get this sort of accordion press for each jump. And we'll demonstrate a couple. Feel free to jump these with me. Keep in mind in this technique. So feet flared, hands to our sides. We hop. Our feet should land just outside our shoulders width. Fingers should meet at the same time. So our hands should meet at the same moment our feet hit the ground. As soon as we land, we pop again. So our heels and hands all clamp shut at that same moment. Open, close. Open, close. Open, close. One jumping jack is the 1-2 set. A to I. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And these are your basic jumping jacks. Do them faster and faster. This will create more work on your heart and lungs. And will absolutely warm up your legs because this is a lot of bending. We're activating the calf muscles and the thighs here every time we jump. The arms swinging forces blood out to the fingers, and this sort of forces your cardiovascular system to push and pull that blood back, meaning your heart has to work harder to create the pressure to have it feed back through the arms and back into the body. This is why we swing. Now, of course, just doing this isn't going to give the same effect. It does absolutely work your shoulders, which is the other side of this. Swinging up puts pressure on the shoulders, especially when you got to get to that stopping point. So the muscles have to engage to create the end. But having the clap relieves some of that pressure because the clap will stop it for you. Jumping jacks aren't really meant to work the muscle groups so much as they are the heart and lungs. This is why it is a cardio drill rather than a shoulder or leg exercise. But that is basically it for jumping jacks. Fairly simple. Keep the shoulders back, kind of chest up, good posture, open, close, open, close, open, close. The only other thing I can mention is try and maintain a stable position. Try and make it so that your jumping jacks aren't flying all over the room. If you're moving around the room, this means you're favoring one foot over the other for that press. So when you jump, if my right leg pushes harder, it's going to move me to the left. If the leg pushes harder, it's going to move me to the right. If I close and come to one side, that means I'm engaging that inner thigh to shut rather than both. So keeping this in the center, pick a spot, jump to 2 spots outside, return to the same spot inside. Same, return and back, return and back. This will ensure that your legs aren't favoring one side or the other. This will also help your stability forward and back to ensure that you're not leaning back as you jump or leaning forward as you jump, keeping a good core as you go. And those are jumping jacks. Now, next up is our burpees. Now a burpee, similar to a jumping jack, it does start with a jump. For this, you're going to jump up. A burpee doesn't need a super high jump. You're just looking to get your feet off the ground. So a little hop is enough to be considered a burpee. The higher you jump, the more intense your burpee is going to be. But the thing that makes it unique is the drop. When we drop, we're going to sink our body to the floor, placing our hands outside of our knees so our palms can land. Once our hands touch the ground, our feet are going to kick out behind into a push-up position before returning in and hop. Hands down, feet out, feet in. Now, a burpee, there are certain variations where you even do a full push-up. So when you drop, you're dropping your chest to the ground here before pressing with the arms and drawing the feet. Jump, land, drop. So as you kick your feet out, your chest is going to drop to the floor like a push-up. Now, we're going to get into push-ups more in just a bit, but this is how you can intensify it. A burpee in its core is a little hop followed by a plank position. Feet out, feet in, feet out, feet in, hop. And that is a basic burpee. Putting emphasis on the toes for your hops and the extensions. Your heels aren't really pushing into the ground here. So when I land, I'm using my toes out, again, keeping live, and draw in. For me, I like to use my burpees two different ways. One, keeping the knees tight. So these are tight in here before I kick out and return to the center. This will work very strong on that inner core. However, you can absolutely shoot them in an open position for a frog hop. So a burpee kind of combines some of our other exercises we spoke on. It's got the jumping jack, hop, it's got a push-up landing, and it's got a horse or pencil squat reset, which again, we'll touch on later. So let's put a pin on burpees, and we'll come back to it probably here at the very end, seeing how it relates to these other exercises. Now, next up, let's talk about pushing, the press exercises. Now for this, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the camera and bring you all down to the ground level. Because a push-up is gonna work strong off the floor here. The key to a good push-up: straight knees, straight hip, engaged core. So when I set up here, I'm going to have my hips not drawn high. I'm not looking to keep my back level with the ground, but rather level with my hips. A drop on a push-up. Hello, Kume. Excuse me, kitty. All right. The drop on a push-up is going to happen at the elbows, wrists, and shoulders. Every push-up should be done with the shoulders or the elbows following the line of your fingers. You gotta test this out. Take your hand up, elbow forward, and kind of fan your fingers up and back. So we kind of get this, dance like an Egyptian pose. Wrist draws back, level with the shoulder, and reach out. So this is the motion we're looking for. Think of it like a wimpy slap. Ah. The reason for this is we want the wrist to have inflection forward and back, never side to side. If you're doing a push-up and your wrist looks like you're waving to the queen, something's wrong. Because if your wrist turns in this direction, what happens is you actually pinch the little bones on the sides of your wrist. Over prolonged time, this can result in carpal tunnel, arthritis, and a whole assortment of other issues. So the position of your wrists is paramount here, and the direction your elbow follows in line with your fingers is the second half. Once we have those, we have multiple push-up positions. So let's bring you guys up a little higher. And we'll take a look at a couple of different push-ups. Now the flower drill essentially follows a pattern on the ground. You can do this sitting on your knees, so you're not using too much strength now. Put your hands out in front with a little diamond. Index fingers and thumbs are touching. This is your diamond push-up. What we're going to do here is dropping your elbows away from your fingers to these back corners, and your chest, your solar plex right here, is going to drop to that diamond. Now you can do that in the air, hold the diamond out in front, bringing your elbows back to put that diamond in the middle of your chest before pushing out again. In and out, in and out. And we do the same motion on the ground. In and out, in and out. So you'll notice my head is out in front of my hands. I'm also doing these on my knees so I don't overexert myself today while we talk about this. But even if my knees are on the ground, I can wrap my ankles or keep them straight. Big thing is my hips remain straight. So doing what can sometimes be called a cheater push-up, I don't like that name because everyone starts somewhere. If you got to start on your knees, start on your knees. Just do them. Then over time, you'll be able to pick those knees up because you got the muscle to support it. But as I drop down, notice my chest is coming to my hands, not my face. I'm not putting my head on the hands. The wrists don't want to move that direction. So I lean forward just a bit to drop the chest and press away. Second thing to note, how far down should you go? Do not lay down on the ground. A push-up is not I come down, I take a break, take a nap, and then I come back up. And I come down, I take a break, and I come back up. Now, rather, if you're doing an exercise, you want to keep your muscles engaged. Now, you will have points of rest in an exercise, but a point of rest doesn't mean a point of relaxation. It means that the structure of your body is supporting you more than the muscles of your body, i.e. your bones. So on a push-up, the upward position, this is your rest position. When you drop, you should come about 1 inch off the ground. Now, I know from the angle of the camera, it's a little hard to see, especially with the shadows, but as I drop, I'm hovering about 1 inch off the ground before returning to a full extension. This is key because as we drop down, it's at that 1 inch point that your muscles are fully engaged. This is where they're working the hardest and where they have to really work to get you back up. And this is where the big development is. If you're getting tired, the drop can help out as well, especially if you're getting early on or you're hitting the very end points of your ability. Dropping to a push-up does engage the muscles as well, but it's that 1 inch hover towards pushing that it gets its name as a push-up. So coming back to the different styles, now we've talked about how deep we want to go in keeping our hips straight. First is that diamond, bring it to your solar plex. The next is the marine style or Pilates style push-up. For this, you're going to point your fingers forward and they set immediately below your shoulders. So they're shoulder width apart and shoulder length, meaning my head is hanging out in front. When I draw, my elbows are going to follow that finger line. My fingers are pointed back behind me, so my elbows are going to draw tight to my rib cage to hug my sides as I press up. So as I drop, hug in the elbows to squeeze your chest as you press away. That is your marine style push-up. Now I find the diamond and marine push-ups are some of the best for punching power because this is the same angle, elbows in, for our chamber when delivering a strike, or even an extension into the solar plexus of an opponent. There's my diamond. There's my Pilates. There's my Marine. So these two, if you're not going to practice any other push-ups, practice these two most, as they're going to have the biggest effect on your punching power in my experience. Now, our next setup, from our diamond, fingers out, elbows in, for the Marine style, is what I call the Russian push-up. Now, I can't tell you why it's called that. This is a name that I picked up ages ago, years and years ago, but it's stuck in my head, and that's the one I use. For this one, we're going to take our hands out in front, and instead of drawing our elbows to our sides, we're going to drop our elbows to the floor. So on this one, our hands are level with our eye line. When we drop, the elbows come down to the ground in front of the shoulders before pressing up again. So it's my wrists, not my whole hand, that's on the eye line. The key here is to have the elbows drop level with the shoulder here. So you can kind of see I have a straight line leading up. And then I extend down and up. This is a really good one to really emphasize that tricep and work on your hammer fist strike, because it engages heavily on that tricep for a downward swing. Our next position, and this is probably most people's favorite because in the grand scheme, I found this is the easiest one to do, and that is the butterfly push-up. For this, we're going to take our hands from that forward position and bring them to the outside, level with your shoulder. So now my hands, instead of being under my shoulders, are going to extend outwards, and my elbows are going to push outwards as well. My fingers are also pointing out to the sides or even towards the corners. But the reason this gets named as butterfly is as I drop, my elbows poke out like a couple of wings, and then I press up, down, and up, maintaining that 1-inch hover before our extension. My elbows are coming above my wrists before I draw up. I'm not drawing my elbows in. Coming this direction creates an angle on the wrist, and that's where you can do damage. So, as always, keep your elbows in line with the fingers, either going towards them or away from them. And then the last one is a planche push-up, or in this case, a half planche. A planche is a high-level balancing technique, as you can find in yoga and many calisthenic exercises. But in essence, a planche is elevating your body so the only thing touching the floor are your hands. In essence, a planche should look something like this. So the body is completely off the ground with only the hands touching. To do this, we take that sort of Marine style push-up, flip your fingers down into your hips. Marines on the shoulders, looking to the sky. Planche to the hips, looking to the feet. My elbows, when I do this, are going to bend again towards my fingers, just like the butterfly. The reason this is called a half planche is because my feet stay on the ground, so I'm only supporting half my body weight when I do this. When I dip, I bring my elbows into my sides, like the Marine style push-up, but my hands come down towards my hips. Depending on your level, you can go all the way to your hips or into your stomach. But the key here is your chest is hovering out in front. Hover the chest and press. Hover and press. So these are our 5 basic push-ups. Diamond, drawing to the chest. This works heavily on the pectoral muscles. Marines, drawing and press. This works heavily on the shoulders. Russian, hands up front, elbows drop, which will work heavily on the triceps. Butterfly, hands level with the shoulders, elbows expressed outwards. This works heavily on the chest and shoulders. And then the planche, which draws the hands to the hips, having that chest hover in front of the arms. This works heavily on the shoulders. But feel free to experiment with these. Play with them, see where you feel the muscles working. In all cases, hips should be straight, core engaged, drop 1 inch to the floor, and maintain pressure left and right. So both hands are working together for these. Other push-ups and variations, such as the typewriter or the one-handed push-up, will give you more things on one side, but that's another day. All right, moving on to pulling exercises. Now, for the pull, again, we're going to adjust the camera here. And I'm going to angle you up a little bit to the top so that you can see the banister here. Because we're going to use a tool for this. Now, if you don't have one of these, you can pick it up at your local Meijer. That's where I got mine. But essentially what it does is it pushes on one side of your door frame and hooks around the top. And it creates a pressure lock here. So your body weight is what's holding it in place. I've been using this for years. It's never once fallen off. It's never once torn the railing off my door frame, or the frame off my door. But be mindful, your doors may be different than mine. In my experience, this has been fine. Now, the two exercises we're going to look at are the pull-up and the chin-up. Now, I pull up is going to have my palms facing out with a wide grip, sort of outside my shoulders. When I draw up here, I'm going to engage my core and my glutes. In other words, squeeze your butt. As I draw, I'm pulling my chest to the bar. Elbows flared out as we come down. The intention here is to engage your latissimus muscles, this sort of muscle underneath your armpit towards your back. It connects to the scapula, shoulder blade. So palms out, elbows flared, and pull your chest to the top. This is your standard pull-up. A chin-up, however, inverts the grip and brings it to the center. So now my palms are facing in towards my face, elbows are pulled to the front. My goal here is, again, engage your core so you have a tight, strong body. Think good posture. Squeeze your glutes, your butt, so that your legs aren't swinging and flailing. And then bringing your elbows down in front, keeping them even. Think of a push-up, that Marine-style push-up. Bring your elbows into your sides, straight down. I'm going to try and bring my chin over the bar so I can chin up and down, up and down. And that's the difference between a chin-up and a pull-up. There's not a whole lot of technique to discuss on these. I'll go ahead and move this down so you guys aren't looking directly into a light. But they're harder than they look. Most of you probably already know that if you've tried to do them before. If you have issues doing pull-ups or chin-ups, and you can't even get yourself to pull up to one, that's all right, because there is a way to get around this. Go ahead and move this up a little bit. And the way we do that is not by pulling ourselves up, but by dropping ourselves down. So pick one or the other, the pull-up or the chin-up, or alternate between the two. And instead of coming from a resting position and drawing yourself, this is where the muscles engage the most. And this is where most people have issues. Don't worry about it. Jump to position. When you get to that point, slowly lower yourself. So for my pull-up, palms facing out, outside my shoulders, I'm going to jump, hold, and then slowly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 count to lower. Nice and slow. This will allow your muscles to engage, but allow them to open to get to a relaxed position, which is where they want to be. So they'll work with you much better. But again, this takes practice. In my experience, sorry, let's move this down a little bit more. There we go. In my experience, when I first started trying to do pull-ups, I couldn't do a pull-up. I couldn't do a chin-up. It was too tough. I was a scrawny kid. But what I found is if I jumped and lowered myself, and this is something I learned through tutorials, speaking with coaches, it's not something I just made up. What I found is once I was able to do about 10 of those comfortably and confidently, I could do about 1 or 2 normal pulling pull-ups and chin-ups. And from there, I just let it grow. So I would start off by doing as many pulling exercises as I can. Once I got to the point I couldn't do anymore, I'd switch it and I'd jump and slowly lower a handful of times, anywhere between 5 to 10 additional times to exercise those newly tired muscles. So if you're having issues, this is a good way to practice and build up that strength. All right, next up, let's see, we have our core exercises. Now for this, I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys right back down to the bottom shelf, and we'll slide back to take a look at our core exercises. Now we're going to take first a look at our roll-ups and sit-ups. Now a roll-up and a sit-up move similarly. The goal here is we're in a laid position, kind of feet not tucked all the way into the bottom, so we don't want to try and lift them, extended out a little bit. You can have your feet fully extended if you'd like. What this does is create more of a counterweight, which makes it easier on your muscles to do the work. But having a good about 90-degree angle on the knees, keeping the feet flat on the ground, keeping your hips set on the ground, bottom of the body just locks in place as we draw up. Now the second thing to keep in mind, and the difference between a roll-up and a sit-up, is the way we do it. Now a roll-up is just how it sounds. I'm going to roll my body. So think of it like I'm rolling up a sleeping bag, but the sleeping bag is my abs. So I'm going to pull my shoulders off the ground like I'm doing a crunch. Then I bring my upper back off the ground. Then my lower back. Now I'm going to use my hands here since we're going so slow. And I'm kind of curling as I go. So you can kind of see my spine is curved. One vertebrae at a time, lower back, mid back, upper back, shoulders. And I'll continue that. 1, 2, 3, all the way up and all the way down for a roll up. Now a sit up is sort of the opposite of this. Instead of curling, I'm going to keep it straight. Good posture all the way through. And I'm going to try and lift up like the mummy. Now, in either direction, we're looking to do this control. Doesn't mean you have to go slow as molasses. It just means that as you rise up, you're not throwing your arms, and as you drop down, you're not literally dropping, instead you're laying yourself. If you come down and you're hitting the ground and you feel your wind kind of go, you've come down too hard. Your muscles released, they're not engaged anymore, and you're just dropping. The goal of the drop is to control lifting and lowering. Now, the second thing that any sit-up should have is control of the arms. Where your arms go is going to affect how much strength you got to use. So if your arms are out in front, this creates another counterbalance because your arms are weighing you in that direction. It's going to make it much easier to do. But you're not always looking for the easy part. Just means if you're not able to do it traditionally, you can do this to help. At the same time, throwing your hands, laying down and then throwing your hands up. This creates a lot of upward energy that will release pressure on your abs because now momentum is picking up some of your weight. So swinging your arms is another way to make it easier on you if you're having difficulty doing standard sit-ups or roll-ups. Now, that brings up the topic of what is standard. The standard would be hands on the shoulders. So we bring our elbows to our knees to touch. When they touch, that means I've come up all the way and I can roll down or sit up. This is your standard. You can go a little bit higher with this by picking your hands behind your head. Be mindful of this position, however. Because your first instinct is going to be to pull with your arms. If you pull with your arms, this is going to hurt your neck. So typically, I don't recommend it. But if you are somebody who does have some neck issues, what you can do is use those hands to help support your neck. So long as your arms stay back, and as you rise up, think about keeping your head back and having your hands just help support the muscles of your neck, not pulling and drawing. Think lean back as you rise up. This will take some of the pressure off of your neck during your sit-ups and during your roll-ups. Last thing to mention, and that is suck it in. As you're coming up, your belly button wants to touch your spine. So think about laying down and then sucking in your belly button. What this will do is push your muscles into your core, and now the deeper muscles will engage to help you lift. This is what creates the difference between somebody who has, washboard abs or somebody who has the sort of beer keg dense muscle grouping. If you look at professional bodybuilders, the sort of big, heavy weightlifters, you'll notice many of them have this sort of rotund belly. They've got a six-pack, but it's kind of a six-pack that pokes out rather than hugs in, versus, your supermodels or your Chris Hemsworths who take off the shirt and suddenly it's this super sleek, pulled tight muscle. That's sucking in the belly button. By sucking that in, you're able to form deeper muscles and stronger muscles and not the bulbous ones that'll push out. Now, I'm not saying that the bulbous muscles are bad. It's just a difference of utility. As a martial artist, I want to have mobility. And if I've got a big belly poking out, I'm not going to be as mobile because I can't crunch and turn because now my stomach is going to hit my leg. So suck in your belly as you do your core exercises. This will maintain a slimmer and sleeker muscle group. All right, next up, leg lifts. So if roll-ups and sit-ups were kind of the upper core muscles here, a leg lift is going to work on the lowers. For this, we'll make that similar diamond that we did with the push-ups, but I'm going to put that underneath my tailbone. Then my feet are going to glue together, heel to heel, and hover 1 inch off the ground. I then lift up, keeping straight knees until my feet reach my belly button, or your belt knot if you're wearing your uniform. And then we lower down. Same thing, sucking in the belly button. And this is your standard leg lift. Now you can emphasize this a little bit more by coming up, and once we get to this position, lifting your hips off the ground to push your feet to the sky. What this will do is engage those upper muscles a little bit to give you a more overall exercise. If these are too difficult, bend your knees a little bit. So starting with bent knees will lessen the amount of weight, because a push-up or a sit-up and a leg lift works off the principle of a fulcrum. Think of if you grabbed a stick with a weight at the end. In fact, I got one right over here. Let's grab our chiaishi. A chiaishi works off the principle of fulcrums. If I grab the weight, or if I grab the stick near where the weight is, I'm holding a 10-pound weight in my hand. However, the further away my hand gets, the more the weight becomes until I'm at the very end, and it's a lot more because of the physics involved. So you kind of say this is 10 pounds I'm holding. Now I'm about 20 pounds. Now I'm probably closer to 30 or 40 pounds, if not 50. I've got to review a little bit of my physics to see how that grows. But one thing I can say, the further away from the weight you get more essentially exponential growth on resistance. So something to keep in mind as you're doing these exercises. This is also why having your arms forward creates less weight, because now you're up towards my head, which means I got to engage these muscles heavier, greater, to lift this weight. If my hands are down, I've got more weight towards my core, which means there's less weight that I need to lift. Same thing on the legs, more weight, less weight. math. It's a wonderful thing. All right, last one for core, and that is our V-up. Now, V-up engages both top and bottom muscles, as we're going to combine our sit-up and our leg lift at the same time. A standard V-up involves having us balance on our tailbone with our feet in the air and our shoulders back. We then open, so our feet, I'm going to slide back a little bit so you can see my ankles, are 1 inch off the ground, and then we draw up and down, up and down, up and down. So a standard V-up would be that sort of toe touch I just did. You notice at that peak, I'm making a letter V with my body. A standard V-up is difficult. So if you're not able to do it, that's all right. I recommend starting with a half V. A half V, instead of extending your legs out fully with straight knees, we're going to bend them so that our shins lay parallel with the ground. And I can grab my ankles. So you can kind of see my forearm lays along the side of my leg here. Just like that. And I reach to touch my ankles. Knees are glued together, and I open up. Draw the knees into my chest and touch my ankles. This is called a half V because I'm only coming halfway. My feet aren't up all the way. And I'm making a much smaller V shape. But this is a good way to get the core muscles engaged, starting to get a feel for the balance point especially, and start building up the strength to push into that full V position. All right. Now, last one's going to our leg exercises. Now for this, I'm going to adjust the camera one more time. Come up tall, so you guys can see a little bit better on the legs. Now I know we're cutting off the head, but that's all right. I want you looking down here anyways. First off is the difference between a pencil squat and a horse squat, sometimes called a frog squat. Ultimately, a squat is simply the act of taking your hips and dropping them to your feet. Pop. Couple things I want to do here though. One, keep my heels on the ground. My weight's going to be more towards my toes, but I don't want to pull my heels up. Because what happens here is you can kind of see my hip is at a 90-degree angle. Versus if I put my knees down, my heels down, I'm going to open this up a little bit. I got top and bounce at the same time. Notice here, I'm closed up full. Now I know my heel's up off the ground, but if you watch close, my hip is going to close more if my heels stay down. This is your pencil squat. Toes are 1, 2, or 3 inches apart, but they're close. You can put them completely together if you like. For my comfort, I like to have a little bit of separation, but my knees are also pushing towards the front. So my knees are following the line of my toes as I drop my tailbone towards my heels. Shoulders trying to stay back for good posture, and extending my hands out as a counterbalance, not to relieve any pressure, rather make sure I don't fall backwards. Because if I keep my hands back and I try and do the sit, I'm going to have too much weight behind, and that's when I fall over. So extending your arms out just creates a counterweight so you don't fall. It doesn't change the amount of pressure coming into the ground. What is going to affect your pressure and the strength of the legs is how deep you go. Now this is going to be changed or altered based on the strength of your legs as well as the mobile flexibility of your legs. So if you don't have the flexibility to go down all the way and you can only go this far, that's fine. Do this. Just keep doing this because over time, it's going to get deeper. It's going to get deeper until you're able to go all the way down to the floor. In fact, you might even start that way as a warm-up. Slow dips, lower and lower and lower to get the hips, knees, and everything warmed up and lubricated before you do full drops. Now the second version is that sort of horse or frog squat. For this, Instead of having your toes face forward, I'm going to put them about shoulder width apart and angle the toes out about 35 degrees or so. This way I can curl my elbows in and sit with my knees flared. Again, I'm trying to keep my heels down to the ground as best as I can before driving up. Shoulder width apart, elbows in, knees flare, and up. So I'm looking to dip my hips. You'll notice I am bowing a little bit, but be mindful that when you're dropping, you're not just bowing. Because this looks like I'm down low. I can see the floor is close to me now. But you'll notice I'm not actually bending my knees much, which means this pressure isn't actually working the muscle. I want this joint to bend. And the further back I can sit to my heels, the more work they're going to have to do, which means stronger thighs, more flexible hips and knees. Now, last ones, and then I promise we're done. I know this is going a lot longer than we usually get together, but we're almost there. And that is the pencil squat, or I'm sorry, the pistol squat and the dip. Both of these, you can sometimes see these referred to as a front pistol and a back pistol. The idea here is from a standing position, I'm going to pick one foot, pick it up off the ground. The other foot, I'm going to sit down towards, just like I would with my pencil squat. However, as I drop, I'm going to keep my knees together so that as I bend, the other foot pushes out in front. And I'm going to try and sit only on the one foot, dropping down and pressing up. If you find difficulty with these, grab a chair or something to help you counterbalance, to help with some of your weight as you come down, and then you can lean on it a little bit. Try and really push the muscle here, but this can act to help you from falling over too much until eventually you'll have the strength to simply dip and rise on your own. Now the second version of this is the dip. Now this was the front pistol. Foot is out in front as we go up and down. For the dip, we're going to put one foot behind. So now I have a leg hanging back, and as I drop down, I'm going to bring that knee towards my heel and then rise up. Again, you can use a chair to counterbalance to help you with this dip. But the goal here is to use the balancing leg to do it. You may be tempted when you hit the ground to use this foot to sort of push off and kind of kick the ground. So now I'm rising up, my foot's still down. I want to prevent this. So I'm going to clench the back of this thigh to keep my foot up as best I can so that I don't use it on the draw. And that is the rear pistol or one leg dip. But this covers it for our exercises today. I hope this was informative to you. It helps you out in your own routines. Again, looking back on our test, a little quiz for Monday. Think about where your shortcomings are, where you may be not doing as well, and use these techniques to adjust how you do your exercises for your 60-30 or even for your sets and reps drills. Because good technique creates better results. It also prevents injuries and it's just overall better for you. But I hope this helped you. If you have any questions or something seemed a little unclear, you want a little more elaboration on, please leave a comment. I reply to them as soon as I get notified. So I try and reply to every comment that comes in to the best of my ability. And if nothing else, I can always set up a Skype call with you to take a look at your technique personally and give you some pointers on them. Or if you disagree with something I said, please let me know. We'll talk about it and hash it out, because through community, through conversation, is how we all learn. Now, I've been doing this for many, many years. I've been coaching for almost 20 years now, and I'm still learning. So if you got something to teach me, throw it in there. I'd love to hear it. If you want something more to learn from me, ask. I'd be happy to share it. But until then, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Boink. Boink.